to another reading wrap up. I think it was just a week ago that I put up my other one, and I already have a stack of books that I've finished. So this is why I need to do reading wrap ups more frequently than monthly, because I often read a lot of books and I do forget details, and I prefer to give as much information as possible when doing my reviews without giving spoilers. So we're gonna go through all of these books in no particular order, but I think we're gonna start with my 1 DNF. The power is out right now, so we'll see if all of a sudden the lights turn on or something yet. But it's the snow outside is like falling so perfectly. I need to get out and see if I can get a clip of that before it's over. It looks like a winter wonderland out there. I mean, it was already all white, but it's got the nice big flakes coming down right now, so it's pretty. And it's definitely reading season. So let's start with my DNF. The Glasstown Game. I really wanted to like this book. So it's a middle grade fantasy taking, Glasstown is something that the Bronte siblings invented, Branwell, Charlotte, Emily, and Anne. And it was a game that they played with their little toy soldiers, and I loved the idea of turning that into a fantasy story for middle grade. It sounded so perfect. I love the Bronte's writing, especially Emily's and Emily's poetry. I need to get my hands on one of her poetry, a collection of her poetry, because I just love the way that she writes so much. So the book starts out, no fantasy yet, just getting to know the Brontes, and like, I found that so hard. So they had 2 older sisters that were older than Charlotte that died at school, at this terrible school. And I did know the Bronte history before, but like the beginning was so depressing, knowing that they died from illnesses that these days would probably have been easily preventable. And then knowing that each of the other remaining siblings all die pretty early, I found that really heavy. And then when the fantasy part had just been starting when I stopped, so I stopped at page 50, the toy soldiers come to life and they're kind of going into this fantasy world, I guess. And for me, this was reading a lot like Alice in Wonderland. So I think if people enjoy Alice in Wonderland, they would enjoy this. But as someone that does not enjoy Alice in Wonderland, I didn't enjoy this. So yeah, that was too bad. Now, I think the first book that I finished this month was The Lost Girls of Willowbrook. So I picked this one up because it was the buddy read for Historathon that's going on this month, and I love the way that they're doing the prompts. I'll share a little bit about that yet, but every book that you read for Historathon builds off of the other one, the last one that you've read. So this was the buddy read because their first prompt was to read a book with the word lost in the title. And in my last reading wrap up, I shared The Lost Melody, and I feel like these books have similar veins because they're both about asylums and people getting trapped in an asylum when they shouldn't be there. But where The Lost Melody is a Christian story and there's a lot of, I don't know, I guess it's a little bit more of a hopeful story. And this one has hope. I liked the ending too, but this one is much grittier. This is a non-Christian story, and there's a lot of language and a lot more detail of what is going on in the asylum. Anyway, so The Lost Girls of Willowbrook, this is based off of a true place. So Willowbrook was in, where was it again? I just read this book like a week ago. Staten Island. There was, it was called like the school, Willowbrook School or something, and it was put up as this school for kids with disabilities and mental illnesses. But it was horrific. Like reading about this, the amount of people they would have in one room, and how, I guess these were all girls. Did they have a male? Yeah, they had male wards too. There was like different buildings, but we were with a female, so we got the female side of things. And the amount of women they had crammed into one place, and how they had to strip everything off and get hosed off for a shower. You didn't know when shower days were coming. You didn't know when laundry days were coming. You didn't know when you could get clean stuff. And oh, the eating conditions, and like the pee all over the floor and the poop all over the floor, like it's horrific. This is based off of true events, at least part of it. So our main character, her name is Sage, and 6 years ago her sister Rosemary, she was told died from pneumonia, but she finds out at the beginning she was actually not dead. Her parents ended up shipping her sister Rosemary off to Willowbrook because she seems to have been schizophrenic, but I don't know if they didn't have the words, or bipolar or something. She definitely had some things going on in her head, and her parents were just sick of dealing with it. It was her mother and her stepfather, and so they shipped her off and lied to Sage and said that she had died. And so Sage finds out that Rosemary's alive, and she decides to go to Willowbrook to find her because Rosemary has disappeared. The school contacted her stepfather like after 3 days. She'd been gone for 3 days. And so Sage goes to find her, but they're twin sisters, they're identical twins, and she gets mistaken for Rosemary and gets put into the asylum. So she gets, I don't know, we get to see through her eyes what this place is really like and the shock of it all. And this is definitely, I would say, it's historical fiction. Oh, I think her power just came on. It did. It's historical fiction, but it's very suspense thrillery. Okay, I thought I would turn my lights on because I actually can now. It's very suspense thrillery because there's this guy that, there's a lore that there is this guy killing people on the island, and a lot of it has to do with Willowbrook. It's got some kind of connection there, and Sage kind of stumbles into that. I really enjoyed the book. It was quite gritty, more swearing, just more, I don't know, I guess you could get a visual of some of this stuff, which I think is also really good. Like, I appreciate being told what was happening, but it was hard to read in some parts because it's hard to imagine that this was actually going on. So this was my first one for Historathon. We'll just maybe go with my next one right away. So the first prompt was to read a book with the word lost in the title. The second one was to read a book set in a different country. So I chose A Lineage of Grace because this is one of the 12 books fiction books I wanted to read this year, and it is the one that my patrons in my Wendy Poplars tier wanted a spoilery vlog for, so I read it and shared my thoughts on it. So this is biblical fiction following women in Jesus's line, in his lineage. So we have Tamar, Rahab, Ruth, Bathsheba, and Mary. And the book looks big, but each story is about 80 to 100 pages long, so it goes by pretty quick. And then each story after the story has about 20 pages of discussion and like spending time, you're supposed to spend time reading the story for the Bible and just investigate the story more. And so I shared a lot of thoughts about this in my Patreon vlog, but overall I enjoyed it. I didn't always like or appreciate where she went with certain stories because you have to take liberties with them, obviously, but I did appreciate just sitting in these stories longer because some of them, they take up like maximum a few chapters in the Bible. Some of them are just a few paragraphs, and you don't realize how huge of an event this would be or how shocking some of this is when you've read it as a child. And that is one thing I really appreciate with biblical fiction, is just being able to sit there and think more about the story instead of it just being a little blip as you read through. So I enjoyed a lot of it, not all of it, but I like how it made me think and reflect on the stories a little bit more. And also the women that God chose to be in Jesus's lineage. It's very interesting. A lot of scandal, that's for sure. It makes me realize that it doesn't matter how messed up I am, he still accepts me and was willing to die for me, so I did enjoy this. Okay, different vein this time. Let's go graphic novel. So I read Enola Holmes, the graphic novels, book 1, except not. This is the first 3 books, Enola Holmes books. The Missing Marquis, The Left-Handed Lady, and Bizarre Bouquets. They're in here as 3 different stories. I read the first one. I was just curious because I've been getting more into manga lately. I was curious to know if I would like graphic novels more. So Enola is supposed to be the younger sister of Mycroft and Sherlock. There is 3, no, not 3. I think there's like 8 books in the series now, and I didn't love them I feel like they're kind of marketed towards middle grade, but I feel like they're more YA. There's very, very strong feminist vibes, and I think to the point even where feminists would be like, okay, this is a little much, because it's very in your face. Like, you're not smart enough to figure it out from how my character is acting, so I'm going to tell you. There was a lot of that going on, and so I thought maybe the graphic novel would be better, and it is, in my opinion. If you're curious about reading Enola Holmes, you haven't read it yet, but you're a little, I don't know, not too into like extreme feminist vibes that are, I think, even too extreme for most people, go the graphic novel route. The pictures are adorable. I loved the illustrations, and because there's not as much time for talking and words, a lot of the feminist stuff gets left out. So in the first book, Enola's mother goes missing. She disappears on Enola's 14th birthday, but she leaves her some clues, and Enola finds that she actually left on purpose. She didn't disappear. And she uses the language of flowers, and so there's little snippets. This is Enola's notebook to leave messages for Enola. And yeah, I enjoyed the graphic novels, not enough to continue reading the rest of them in this book, but I liked this more than I liked the actual novels. Moving along, my Agatha Christie for the month, I wanted to read one a month this year, was The Pale Horse. So this one does not follow a detective. Our main character is a guy named Mark Easterbrook, and I will say the beginning of this was pretty confusing. I wasn't really into it. It just took me a while to get my brain around what was happening. So what happens is a lady dies, or she's on her deathbed. She calls for a priest, and he comes, and she gives him a list of names. He writes them down, slips them into his shoe, and he's gonna do something about this. And as he's going, he's killed. But the thief didn't think to look in his shoe for a note. And so the police find this note, and a lot of the people on the list have died recently. So there's something suspicious going on. And our main character, Mark, he finds out that there's something fishy going on with this place called the Pale Horse. There's 3 old women that live there, and they seem to be able to, or they claim to be able to, kill people from afar using different spiritual techniques that they do and stuff. So there's something fishy going on, because the people that they're supposed to be killing off are actually dying, even though they're just doing this weird witchcrafty stuff. And he doesn't believe in that, but the results are actually true. Like, people are actually dying, so he doesn't know how to explain that. And then he kind of tries to figure that out, I guess. So the beginning I found a little rough. I wasn't really getting into it, and then like the last half I was like, yeah, I know where this is going, and then I didn't. And I love it when Agatha Christie can confuse me or surprise me, and so I think I rated it 5 stars on Goodreads. It's probably like 4.5, but if it's gonna be 4.5, I'm gonna rate it 5 on Goodreads. So I enjoyed another Agatha Christie. I don't normally share the books that we read or listen to in our homeschool here. I have a whole separate channel where I talk about books for our homeschool and stuff, but this one I wanted to include because it's Insignificant Events in the Life of a Cactus. This is a story about a girl named Ava Green, and she has she's born with no arms. I wanted to include it because I do enjoy middle grade myself, and sometimes there's middle grade I enjoy with my kids, but then there's also middle grade that I enjoy like myself, and this one I really enjoyed. We all did, so it felt like it should be on this list. So Ava Green was born with no arms and was adopted. She's, I think, 13 at the beginning of this book, and her family has decided to move from Kansas to Arizona to run a, what is it called? Like an amusement park, but it's like a cowboy western themed amusement park out in the desert in Arizona. And the way Ava approaches life, she's not all down and out about the fact that she has no arms. She's got a sense of humor. She approaches everything with humor. She's determined. She's a problem solver. And we all, listening to this book, laughed out loud. Sometimes at the same times, sometimes at different times. It was hilarious. We're actually currently reading the second book, Momentous Events in the Life of a Cactus, right now, and so far also really enjoying that one. if you like middle grade, highly recommend this one. And then my last book, this one was 5 stars. Loved it as well. This is Recorder by Kathy McCrum. So this one was gifted to me by Amy over at Hearthridge. I appreciate it so much. So this is a Christian science fiction book by Enclave Publishing, which I've decided I need to read more of their books next year because I really enjoy the ones I have read. Okay, so I was a bit confused at the beginning of the story, which is normal for me for like science fiction and stuff because you're learning a whole new world. But we are in the future and humans have colonized, I actually don't remember where we were, either a planet or a moon or something like that. It's not really significant. And so we have like our regular humans doing life, but then there are these people called recorders. They live in the consortium and you can gift your child to be a recorder. And what recorders do, their job is to be unbiased and just record events, like write down and document everything that's happening. And so they are raised to be completely unbiased. They don't have names, they don't have friends. It's a very sterile environment where they are raised. And then when they become a certain age, they are given a drone that is, I think, supposed to help them and stuff, but also if they're feeling any kind of bias or like there's a jump in their emotions, they pretty much get an electrical shock, I think. So yeah, so our main character in here, she doesn't have a name, so we'll go by Recorder, as every other recorder is. She is on this mission to go with a team to a station that they had, an outpost, where everyone either died or they haven't heard from them in a long time, so they don't know what has gone on. And things kind of go wrong on their mission, and her drone gets wrecked, and she finds herself in a space for the first time where she's like allowed to have emotions and think things and have opinions, and so it's very confusing for her. Yeah, so really enjoyed this book, and I'm so excited because what sucks when you read a book in a series, so you finish it and you want to read the book 2, but sometimes you have to wait for book 2. Well, book 2 is coming out the day that this is going live, so I only have to wait a few days, other than the fact that in Canada, so far, I can't order it except Kindle and audiobook, but I want a physical copy. So hopefully when the date actually comes, November 15th, I'll actually be able to order a hard copy because I definitely need to continue with the series ASAP. I'm so excited about it. But then I'm going to read book 2 and then I'm going to be like, oh, now I have to wait forever for book 3, but it will be worth it. This definitely gave me some Skyward vibes. It's not like the same at all, but it gave me some of those vibes. Really recommend this one if you enjoy sci-fi at all. Okay, see, that was like just as long for less books than my last wrap up, I think, but I like to talk about them sooner because then I remember things that I want to tell you guys, and especially when I read so many really good books. So let me know something that you've read recently that you've enjoyed, and I will see you guys soon.